Welcome, valued viewers. This is News with a View, a Fat Cat production. I'm your host, John A. Costa. Today is August 29th, 2025, and this is episode 123. I'd like to apologize for not having a podcast the last few days, even with the breaking news that was going on. I had not been feeling well and just didn't have the energy to do this. There wasn't really that much going on other than the active shooter and shooting, which to me I don't really cover because that part isn't political. Afterwards will become extremely political. And as with all these tragic events, it does become political, mostly when guns are used or violence. Then there's always the people on both sides that jump in. So since it has now become political, because they're all calling for some type of, not all, but the Democrats are calling for more gun control. This wasn't about gun control. This mentally deranged person who was indulged by the Democrats as being normal and not a mentally unfit individual that needed mental health and maybe confinement are actually to blame. Yeah, there, I said it. It has not been confirmed as to any medication he was taking at the time of his murder spree. So, most informed people know that people going through the process of becoming an alternate gender, which you cannot become an alternate gender. Your chromosomes are your chromosomes. If you're born a man, you will die a man. If you're born a woman, you will die a woman. You can call yourself whatever you want. It doesn't mean you are that person. You want to gender identify yourself? Yeah, I already feel that you have a mental illness going on that needs to be addressed. There's something about you that is not right. And I understand, you could scream all you want. That's my personal choice. Well, what? It's not your personal choice. Honestly, it's not. You are configured the way you are configured in your DNA. And you could be that one rare instance where there is a chromosome abnormality, which, again, makes you not normal. But most of these people, 99.9% of them, are mentally ill. For whatever reason, they are mentally ill. And I'm all for mentally ill people not being able to drive a car, buy a gun, become a school teacher, become a pilot. Is that a problem? Do people have a problem with letting the mentally ill just run around and pretending that, and indulging them that they're normal? I'm sorry, you are not normal. I apologize for this too. You are not normal. You're abnormal. Nature would say you are abnormal also. Hey, Sometimes things are just broke. And this gender identity crisis, make believe. Make believe. You are indulging the mentally ill if you sit there and go, well, yeah, okay. You want to be called Robin instead of Robert? No, no, no. I will call you Robin, but I will say, hey, dude, Robin, because that's what you are. And if you get offended by that, yeah, okay. That's fine. You're allowed to be offended. But what you can't be classified is normal. You are not normal. There is something wrong with you. In the United States, primarily follows the Dutch protocol for dealing with these people, which is to affirm a person's self-asserted transgender identity and then provide minors with puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and eventually transgender surgeries. Holy cow. Holy cow. I mean, and in California, they think that a child should be able to make that right without their parents' approval. Can't buy cigarettes, can't drive, can't drink, but I could alter my body at 11 years old because I know what's best for me. Right? A big F you, liberals. You're responsible. Democrats are responsible for what just happened there and what has happened in the past with some of these transgender school shooters that go after religious people instead of going under a tree and blowing their own brains out, which is wrong and horrible and should not happen because they're mentally ill and need to have mental health intervention. You know, you could say, oh, why didn't they just kill themselves? That would be horrible for the family and friends of that individual because they didn't seek or were not given the opportunity to seek competent mental health intervention where they go, yeah, that's not normal. You're not normal. But we're going to help you. Instead of indulging them and giving them God knows what type of hormones to alter these people's mental state. Because you can't alter their physical state, even with surgery. They are still the genetic person they were at conception. Well, not at conception. A little bit further down the line there. But when you're born. So, this is and most of these people, recent studies have shown most children outgrow transgender inclinations and that surgeries do not solve their mental health issues. Follow the science. Follow the science. The debate will continue on what gun control can actually do or has accomplished, which obviously nothing in this state, because really, I mean, he had no criminal record that they say, you know. So him purchasing a weapon would be perfectly legitimate. He was 23 years old. he can buy a weapon. Unless there was some type of mental clause out there that prevented him from purchasing a weapon. And I'm for, even though, NRA and I own guns and everything, but I'm all for if a person is deemed mentally unfit, and after the due process of going through the due process of declaring that person mentally unfit to own a weapon, then that weapon can be confiscated through due process. What that due process is, don't know yet. We have, red line draw, clauses, and what to look for and what they're allowed to do. In domestic cases, guns are taken away, and there can be instances where if this person had a run-in with the police, that it would flag, and they go, well, we need a little bit more details before we hand you over a gun. So I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, but we have lots of laws that abridge amendments. So we can work this out, but there has to be a system where I can challenge it, where I can go back and go, I'm no longer a threat, a perceived threat, or a medical or mental threat. I understand when people go, well, we don't allow blind people to drive. Well, driving is a privilege, not a right. So there's a difference there. There is a difference. But the law does allow discrimination. The military won't take you if you're a cripple, or blind, or deaf, or missing a limb, or as mentally unfit. I'll use the mentally retarded. Brain challenged. Yeah, whatever you want to label it as. You can't be a mailman if you're blind. You can't be a surgeon if you're a paraplegic. So there are instances where discrimination is a legitimate circumstance. We got to figure this out. Now, was this guy was mentally deranged? I don't know if you'd be able to stop people who are mentally deranged. What stopped him from filling his car with gasoline and explosive, driving through the wall of that church and exploding? I mean, it just, sick people are sick people. And this person's, and these people get to the point where they are competent enough to draw a conclusion, be it crazy conclusion, but figure out a way to make that work. The old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. Now, in the same article, in the same breath, and in the same incident, you have the Minneapolis police chief urges media outlets to stop saying church shooter's name. Says no doubt he wanted to terrorize innocent children. All right. But these same people wanted us to shout out George Floyd's name. A criminal who had stabbed a woman or threatened to stab a woman in her abdomen to kill her baby, who had committed numerous crimes, who had mental illness and because of his drug abuse, and we were told we have to say his name, say his name, say his name, say his name. They went running into restaurants. Black Lives Matter went running into restaurants, going up to white people, getting in their faces and threatening unless they said George Floyd's name. But Donald Trump's is Hitler, right? So why can't we say Robert Westman, the transgender child killer? The transgender child killer. Why can't we say that? Why can't we say Robert Westman, the mentally deranged transgender child killer? But we should shout out George Floyd. F you liberals once again. You see the bullcrap of the slanted media and the politicians who prescribe to that, who say mental illness is perfectly normal, and we should accept them as being normal. No, we should accept them as being mentally ill. Normal? No. No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And again, you know what's going to happen? This will be politicalized. This will be weaponized by both sides, by the Republicans and by the Democrats. This will be weaponized. Not to prevent it from happening again, but to get votes. To align their political agendas. And this is Republicans and Democrats. What do you think, folks? Think I'm wrong? Leave a comment. And you could say, leave a comment. You could leave, hey, you got a face for radio. I don't care. What I do want to hear is back from you people. Because if I reach 50 people, on top of the 50 people or 200 or the 1,000 people that have seen my videos, the word goes out. Now, I know I'm a conservative leaning. I'm not MAGA. I use the Constitution, and where my buddy Bob in New York keeps yelling at me about having a 200-year-old document that you keep referring back to, that was written 200 years ago, which it really wasn't, 150 or 60 years ago. Well, the 14th Amendment, that was 1868. And has no bearing on today. Well, our Constitution does, and that's the Constitution, Bob. So it has a huge bearing on what happens today, as it did back then. I think the Democrats must tread very lightly again here, and have to look and do a soul search on them and saying, yeah, we believe that people should have the right, but certain people need to have an evaluation on what they're doing. And if you find, and you will find doctors who say drinking lime juice will cure your cancer. You will find it. If you search for a doctor that will tell you some alternate treatment, you will find it. If you go to 5 doctors who are all specialists in their fields and they say, yeah, you have cancer and these are your 3 options, do nothing, do chemo and radiation, and do surgery. And they can give you all the stats on it. And you can make an informed decision. If you go out and go to 50 of them, you will find the one that says, no, lime juice is the cure for everything. And you have the right to drink the lime juice. So, you have rights. Even the mentally ill have rights, but they shouldn't have the rights to buy a weapon or drive a car, fly an airplane, do surgery, provide medical health. There are limitations. There are limitations. But this is going to be used in 2026 and capitalized by the Republicans. So Democrats, you must tread lightly here and be meaningful. And you have the mayor, no prayers. They were praying already. No prayers. See, I worry about people like that. I worry about people like that come out and say stuff like that. That's like saying, why are you complaining about starving? You're eating a sandwich right now. Why are you even talking about starvation or hunger or anything like that? You're eating a sandwich right now. That's the logic. That's the logic of the left. All right. That was 25 minutes. This is going to be a long show today. I got a lot to do here. And I'm not telling you what I'm doing until I do it. Oh, am I mentally ill? Oh, probably. And I don't want to make a joke like that. Trump cancels Harris's Secret Service detail that was extended by an undisclosed Biden order. Now, it wasn't a secret order, though I called it secret. But it wasn't just made known to the public, which is allowed. That's fine. But Trump revoked Harris's Secret Service protection on Thursday, and this was according to a copy of a letter reviewed by CNN. And we all know that former presidents get Secret Service for life, and vice presidents usually get it for 6 months, can be ordered more, but usually limited to a known or perceived known threat to those people. So it has been done before. So Biden signed this order right before leaving the White House, and this order was canceled in his letter titled Memorandum for Secretary of Homeland Security and dated Thursday. So Trump canceled her Secret Service protection. I think in today's world, these 6 months might need to be extended a little bit, or at least expanded a bit. There are bad people out there. You know, President Trump, I will call you. You can't, even though sometimes I do say I will take live callers. You break up my stream here. All right. I think that there are cases where a vice president might need added protection. My belief is that in this case, she does. She does need added protection, at least extended. And if there's any known threats against her or, perceived against her, yeah, she should. She was the vice president of the United States. Love her, hate her, doesn't matter. Does not matter. We can only see what works out here. Trump had Secret Service protection and he was shot, and almost shot twice. So, but Trump cancels Harris's Secret Service protection. So, I thought Trump would be okay with it because then he keeps an eye on her, and he knows everything that's going on. But that's just sneaky me. All right. Now, let's talk about the Fed's Board of Governors. And I apologize for some of you hearing a little crackling in the audio every once in a while. I'm trying to pin that down. I think I know what it is. And I'll have to work on it a bit. But I think I know what that crackling sound is. Comes and goes. So Trump officials lodged new criminal referral against Fed Governor Lisa Cook. Now, Lisa Cook is the latest Democrat to be found to have allegedly falsified mortgage documents or misrepresented herself in the filing of such document. And again, I know it sounds very minor, but it really isn't very minor. Yeah, see that? I think that's my problem right over here. And we'll fix that. But it isn't very minor because a bank needs to look at who they're giving the money to, what type of collateral is being used, and is it being used in the manner that it's being presented or offered as documented. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to take I want a loan because I want to open a delicatessen, and it's really a massage parlor for prostitution, well, that person lied on their application. They're going to jail too, on top of everything else. So when you fill out a mortgage application, they all have to comply with federal standards. And at the bottom of that application is like, you attest that I gave, to the best of your knowledge, truthful and accurate information contained on it. And one of the big ones that they do ask you is, what is the purpose of the loan? To purchase a home, property, a structure. Most banks won't lend money on vacant land. There's other ways to do that. So we're talking about a home here. And what do you plan on doing with that home? Is it going to be owner occupied? And is that going to be your legal address? Because what they look at there, they look at the not only the value of the home, but that you're going to maintain it. If you're going to live there, chances are you're going to maintain it. If you're renting it out or using it as an investment property, you're going to do the least you can do to it to maximize your income. And if that's the case, bank is taking a little bit more risk with that. You could walk away, you could be sued, the tenants can burn the house down. There's lots of things that can happen that might not happen if you're there. And that's why they ask, are you going to own or occupy that house? And if you say, yes, I'm going to own or occupy that house, and that's going to be my legal residence, then, okay, you get a different rate, you get a little bit lower rate, and you just move on. Now, at the loan review, they again ask you in paperwork, and you sign multiple papers that you are truthful and that nothing has changed. Like 2 weeks before closings, they send out a letter. I know my credit union did that. Nothing has changed, materially changed. You still have a job. You're still going to live in the house. Your insurance is still saying this. You have all this information, and nothing has changed, right? You're still married, or you're still single. Nothing has changed that would materially affect the validity of the paperwork. And then at closing, they make you sign a document, the abstract, who is using, that most banks, lenders, and lawyers use to facilitate titles, to pay people off, that there's a third party not connected to either one of these parties that handles all the minutia paperwork and checks crossing back and forth. But in there too is a document that you sign that, you are who you say you are again. You have to have a driver's license or some type of government issued ID that they then take and they go, Even though your lawyers had done that already, the abstract does that again. And 99.999% of the time, there's never a problem. They make you sign that nothing has changed. Now, if in Cook's case, she was using this for rental property, which is perfectly okay. She could do that. She could buy multiple homes and do that. As long as you disclose on the paperwork, yeah, I'm doing this as an investment. Because that's what a rental property is. It's an investment. And the bank might say, hey, instead of giving you a 5.2% loan, we're going to give you a 6.1% loan. A 9/10 difference is, you're using it as a business, not as a home where you'll be there all the time. We'll still give you the loan, but it's at 6.1 and not 5.2. You don't want to do that? Adios. Have a good day. But if you disclose that, that's perfectly fine. The bank then would go, okay, let's see what you owe, and what's your debt structure? What is your, you're going to fix this up? You're going to rent it out? Do you have the money to fix it up? Is it move-in condition? Then they look at the appraisal, and the appraisal might say, hey, you got a 20-year-old roof here. It's not leaking, but it's a 20-year-old roof. Bank can turn around and say, hey, listen, that's a 20-year-old roof. Before we'll give you the loan, but you have to have money set aside to put a new roof up there, and you have 180 days to do it. If not, the money that's set aside in escrow, we'll have it done for you. And if there's a difference between then and now, you're on the hook for that. But we find the company then, and we go and have it done. And they can do that. Now, if it's an owner-occupied home, they're going to take the position that, all right, it's a 20-year-old roof. You might get 5 years out of it. It might have been a 30-year guarantee. You got 10 years on it, whatever. But if at least we know that if you're living there, you're going to address it. And that's it. Now, she didn't do this. Schiff didn't do this. And Attorney General Letitia James, or whatever her name is, she didn't do that. Now, Adam Schiff probably has a defendable position on that. I was in Congress between California and Washington, and when I was in Washington, that was my legal address. When I go back to California, but he didn't explain it that way. And there is a way to explain that. You could say, no, it's not my legal address, but I'm there, all the time. I'm a congressman. And the bank probably would have said, okay, yeah, we're good with that. You told us what's going on, and you're Adam Schiff, you're a congressman. Yeah, we're not going to worry about that. And banks can give exceptions. It isn't like, wow, we'd love to help you here, but can't do it for you. But you could at least prove that you're in town all the time, and that's where you're using it. Adam Schiff has a somewhat defendable position. And I dislike the guy. Every part of me, there's nothing about Adam Schiff that I like. But Does he have a defense? Yes, he has a defense, and it's a good defense. And I think that a judge would look at it and go, the bank didn't question it. Because the bank could have asked the question, well, you own a house in California, and that's your legal residence right now. Is that house up for sale? Because that will also, if you don't have that bill to pay right now, or that you're going to sell it, you're going to make money, you're going to, puts us in a much better position. Is that what you're going to do? Is that your plan? And he could go, well, listen, if someone made me a good enough offer on the house, yeah, I'd think about selling it. Doesn't mean he has to. Doesn't mean that he has to now go and put the house up for sale because no. Someone came up and made me an offer, I might take it. So he has a defendable position that he can fall back on. You might find a judge that says, yeah, no, they asked you 3 times, and 3 times you gave the same answer, blah, blah, blah. You're a lawyer. You know what that all meant. Did you not know what that meant? Did any one of your lawyers or anyone consulting you, not so much a lawyer, but anyone consulting, tell you that, this could be a problem? So he's in for a bumpy ride, but I think he's in a lot better shape than Cook, who never moved in the house and rented it out, but didn't say that. Said she was going to live there. So now you get into the question of, was that a big enough, was it big enough to go this route? Spitting on the sidewalk, jaywalking. But this is a federal crime, because those papers are federally protected papers. Because each loan says that, if it says that it could be sold on the secondary market or sold to another individual, it must meet the standards of. If I write a note where I hold the mortgage, me, and I say I'm going to hold that till you pay it off, or you sell that house, and then I got to get paid back. I can't. I can do that. I could put my own terms in there as long as they're not, usury or crazy things. There are legally definitions on what you can and cannot do. But what that would happen to me is that I could not sell that mortgage paper into the secondary mortgage market like a bank could do. I could sell it to another individual who must abide by all the rules set in that contract. So, most mortgages have that the note can be given to someone else to either administrate or they can buy it, but they must adhere to the terms that everyone agreed to. So, she did not do that. She outright misrepresented the loan. And as such, in her job on the Federal Reserve Board, ethics are everything. And you could scream all you want, Donald Trump, New York and stuff. Yeah, she can fight this too. In New York's case against Donald Trump, the feds wouldn't even touch it because they said it was so skimpy. And if New York wanted to do it, more power to you. But we're not going to do it. Because in Trump's case, it was what he said was the value of his properties that he was using as collateral for the loan. And that the state said that the collateral did not meet what he wrote. And as such, he was committing fraud. And of course, that was in New York State. Since the loan, I think, was given by Deutsche Bank, and even though Deutsche Bank has to follow federal laws and stuff, since it was New York, New York took the battle. And when Deutsche Banks came in there, they said, we looked at the collateral, we were fine with those numbers. And New York said, we did our own appraisal and they're wrong. And as such, our numbers count, not yours. This is why the case will be tossed out, and it will be tossed out with prejudice. They will not be able to refile this case against them, because none of the banks said we had an issue with the collateral or the value stated. We were perfectly okay with those numbers. So the bank did their due diligence in verifying that information to their standards and wrote the note. It wasn't that Trump got any preferential treatment on the interest of the loan. You can negotiate the interest. Nothing stops you from doing that. And they gave him the loan, which was paid in full, everyone was satisfied. And they're going to say that this was politically motivated, just like they said with the fine and everything else was just, past the Eighth Amendment. And, you can't just do that. You can't make up numbers just because you can make up numbers for a fine, for a punishment, because that's guaranteed in the Constitution. But you can say, I have these 5 pens. I'm selling these 5 pens for $1 million each. And I want to take a loan out on that. And they go, well, 5 pens for $1 million. Who'd buy it? And goes, I just got to sell one. That's all. And they can turn around and go, no, that's a big pen worth 19 cents, and that's it. They could do their due diligence, or they could turn around and go, all right, we'll lend you $1 million, and we'll take the collateral of that big pen, and at some point in time they have to answer to their board of directors and their shareholders. But if you're paying 8% on that, and the market is only giving you normally a 3.5% return, and you've done this before, and you've always been good with us, and you've always paid your note, or you met the legal criteria of not paying your note, you filed bankruptcy or something like that, you've done that before, that's an entity. And these were Donald Trump's entities, yeah, you can do that. It's not illegal. It's not illegal to fail. It can't be held against you that they won't give you a loan. But again, they don't have to. But if they do. So Schiff, James, and Cook had stated in multiple signed documents that attested to the fact that their second homes would be their legal residencies. That is where the trouble starts. And they are in trouble. Cook can be fired and was fired because she's unethical. And I don't want unethical people sitting on the Fed board. And I'm not going to suspend her because then I can't fill that vacancy. So I fire her. She lied. It says right here, I'm looking at the paperwork. You want to sue us about it? Have at it. This case doesn't even come close to Humphrey's probate. So, and she could turn around. He didn't like me. He did this because he didn't like me. Well, it could be. Did you sign this? Did you do as what you said you were going to do for the loan? No, he didn't. So he doesn't have to like you. Yeah, you're fired. And that's what's going to happen. And they're going to scream, it's racist. They're racist. That's the same reason he's going after James. Why? The same reason he's going after the D.C. mayors and the mayor of Baltimore and soon to be the mayor of Chicago, because he's racist. No, he's not racist. He's also not blind. And America's not blind. We know what's going on in these cities. We see it. And it's got to end. Lisa Cook, under bad advisement or whatever, falsified a document. How can you have her running the Federal Reserve governors? You can't. You can't. So this segues into a city's crime is so bad that MSNBC couldn't ignore it. Baltimore's Democratic Mayor Brandon Scott experienced some rare backlash from the mainstream media. MSNBC is not mainstream. With the host Ana Cabrera reminded him about the crimes in his city. President Trump referred to Baltimore as a hellhole while speaking to his cabinet when the topic of federalizing police forces across the country came up. Part of the cabinet meeting included talking about the White House takeover of D.C. police force and the deployment of National Guard troops to reduce the criminal activity taking place in Washington, D.C. During the MSNBC interview, Scott seemed to rule out the federal takeover of local police in Baltimore, trying to tout a 50-year low in homicides. Nevertheless, Cabrera hit back and highlighted how the city still has one of the highest crime rates in the nation, with dozens of homicides already been committed this year alone. The Mayor Scott replied, "We're investing in a community violence intervention work program," and this is a killer here, "where we are paying people who used to be in that life of crime to now prevent violence from happening." They're paying criminals not to be criminals. I am sure every single one of them is on some type of public assistance. They're paying them not to be criminal. How about just being a good citizen and not being a criminal? Do you see the democratic logic here? This is absolutely ridiculous. We're paying them not to be criminals. Well, no one's paying me not to be a criminal. And this isn't about me too or I want my share. This is about being a good citizen. You shouldn't have to pay your citizens not to be criminals. Mayor Scott should be removed from office. Might be the stupidest political move that a Democratic mayor can do. We're paying people who used to be in that life of crime to now prevent violence from happening. So you're paying a bribe. Is that what you're doing? MSNBC countered Cabrera. Doesn't appear to be working. New York Times called it an overdose of capital. Earlier this year. When asked about Trump's comment highlighting how far the city has fallen, Scott can only deflect and say, I really don't care what the president thinks because I know the residents in Baltimore have a deep pride in their community and we acknowledge the progress that we've made, but also that far too many people are still getting hurt in our city. So it's not working. And this is the problem with the Democrats. Democrats just can't admit what everyone else is seeing in these deep blue-run cities. And this is my opinion here. I'm allowed an opinion. But we're going to help them see it in 2026. Count on it. And I said, all these things can be weaponized by a political group. You don't think that the Republicans and President Trump is not going to jump all over this mayor's comments? That we're paying criminals not to be criminals because that's a way of preventing it. Show us. You can't because it's not happening. It's a lie. And the only reason crime rates gone down in a lot of blue cities is because you're no longer reporting those break-ins, those windows, those assaults, jumping turnstiles, shoplifting as crimes. We know what you're doing, and we will press it home because you allowed it to happen. Democrats, you allowed the Republicans to jump in and just say and show where you have failed, and you have no defense on it. None. Well, we didn't have the manpower. Well, didn't you defund your police? Didn't you move police away from over here? Didn't you do this? Well, yeah, because that's what the people wanted. Well, so the people wanted crime. Now, part of your job is to uphold the law. So if people wanted to sacrifice people in the street, you're okay with that? Well, no, of course not. That's the extreme. Let's talk about the murders. Think they're extreme? Talk about businesses being robbed. You think that's extreme? People that want to go to work and just put a roof over their head and food on the table for their children, or even for themselves, that they have to worry every time they walk out their front door or go by their window. You think that's okay? Stop lying to us. We are a lot smarter than that. Even though you call us uneducated, we are a lot smarter than that. And you just can't continue to lie to us. We're calling you out. You've already called us Nazis. You've already called us racists. But what else can you call us? Truthful? How about that? How about trying truthful? How about calling us realistic? And we might not have all the answers, but we can see what the problems are and address them. And you might have to modify as you go, but yeah. Democrats saying, oh, no, that's not happening, and it's happening right in front of everyone. You go to Kensington in Philadelphia, look it up. YouTube, Kensington, Philadelphia. YouTube crime in Baltimore, LA, San Francisco. Yeah, do that before you call me ignorant. Bob in New York. I haven't heard from you, Bob. Give me a call. All right, Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, Republican, wants an audit of feds cashing in on fraudulent unemployment benefits after 5 federal employees took in more than $400,000 in falsified unemployment insurance. So Senator Ernst is demanding a federal watchdog audit on how many government workers are accepting fraudulent unemployment benefits while still collecting paychecks after discovering a handful of rip-off artists built taxpayers out of nearly $500,000. Now, if you took a look at all the federal employees, I would say 99 point something are honest, hardworking, and doing their job as they've been instructed to do their job. Whether you need 12 people to count paper clips in a drawer, that's a different topic. But if you talk about them doing their job faithfully and as directed to by their management, I'd say 99% of those workers are just fine. But what this shows is that maybe a more in-depth look on this. And how did she find this out? Was this part of Musk's? Was this part of Doge? How was this discovered? How was she able to discover this? And the states that they were collecting this money never did. Was it that they had 2 social security numbers? Was it, fraudulent bank accounts? I mean, how was this able to get through and no one discover it? And this happened under Trump, this happened under Biden, this happened under Obama. So I won't say, look at another case of Biden. No, some of these ones happened while Trump was president. And Trump and I don't hold Biden responsible for people doing illegal acts that he has no control over. Those are the people that are in his offices and all the way down that are supposed to be doing their job. And maybe that's why these guys were fired, because they were ineffective. But that's another podcast. So, in a letter Thursday to the Labor Department, Acting Deputy Inspector General Michael Molka, or Mikola, whatever, obtained by a news organization, that Ernst tallied up more than $405,000 taken in by 5 federal employees, double dipping on the taxpayers' dole. And one worker in Veterans Affairs and the IRS took more than $130,000 in unemployment over 6 years on the job, and was even promoted several times. A U.S. Postal Service employee nabbed more than $109,000 as part of a scheme across 8 states that started in 2020. Well, that was under Biden, but again, how would Biden, and these are schemes. Another United States Postal Service employee was convicted in Boston federal court in 2023 of embezzling more than $90,000 in unemployment benefits. A Department of Labor worker also picked up an additional $46,000 in jobless benefits for around a year and a half while still on the federal payroll. So, and an employee working full-time at Social Security Administration cashed more than $30,000 in unemployment benefits between 2020 and 2021. Now, you say, these are being tagged towards the Biden administration. In a lot of federal cases, fraud and stuff, there's a statute of limitation, but not so much on fraud. The IRS, their language says that in the case of fraud, but that is in filing your income tax. Now, these people, how'd they file their income tax and no one ever catch this? So if there was fraud committed there, yeah, they might be able to go back further, but Department of Justice and things like that normally only go back 5 years. So she made a comment that thousands of bureaucrats are ripping off taxpayers in plain sight, not even bothering to wear a disguise. Who also chairs the Senate's Doge Caucus, in a statement. If it weren't for these darn whiz kids at Dodge, they might not have gotten away with it. So this was by Doge. Like I said, I led up to that. It was by Doge. And she's saying that we're only reporting on these people, but there's thousands. Now, that's a big statement. Iowa just, I think they went blue in their state legislation. So, legislators. And she said, I'm rooting out the rip-off con artists and putting an end to the inside jobs of making it impossible to pocket any government paychecks and unemployment benefits at the same time. Tip of the problem, Musk and Doge found these problems. They're coming to light. You just can't go in there, do it, and in a day, spit out everything without really looking at it. And this is more to come, folks. And again, this will all be used in 2026. And when I say weaponized by a political party, if the facts are correct, it's not weaponizing, it's exposing. So when you go, yeah, see, they're weaponizing it. No, they're exposing it. And now they're using it as a weapon because you allowed it to happen. The Democrats can only blame themselves. Their crazy rhetoric, their crazy logic. The moderate Democrats who sat back and go, I'm not bucking the system because that's where I get my money from, so I could run again. Yeah, that honeypot is going to dry up real quick. Democrats are already seeing a major downturn of financial support and donations. Yeah, there's still school kids out there that will give $1, a $5, or a tenner. And that adds up quickly. Bernie Sanders shows that, and AOC shows that. And they run around, but they run around as a, to fund the DNC, and they get a percentage of that. And I'd like to know what that is, but I'm sure they get a percentage of that into their own little coffers that they can only use for, running for office again. I'm not saying they're pocketing it into their own pockets. They're a lot smarter than that. But the amount of money that the Democrats are going to have to spend on advertising after Harris's, they can't account for, what, $1 billion worth of money? What happened to that? And Newsom can only draw so much money from California and maybe some of the other blue states, but even that's drying up. And he's being called to account. And no matter how the media is trying to say, MAGA is turning against Trump. No, I can tell you that's not happening. And I can tell you that most Republicans are very happy with what they're seeing. We knew that Trump can't fix what Biden has done in just 4 years to our economy. And that there was going to be some hurt. We knew that that was going to happen. So we're fine with that. Get rid of the crooks. Let's start there. That's a real low-hanging fruit. We can do that immediately. And then start looking at what they've done and how they've done it and how they screwed every American. Not just Republicans. Democrats have to put gas in their car. Democrats have to buy eggs. Democrats have to take care of their families. Democrats have to take a mortgage out. So this isn't just about hurting Republicans or MAGA people. This is about hurting all Americans. What the Democrats did hurt all Americans. Except, who wasn't hurt? Yeah, illegals. They dumped their black voters and went after illegals. Why? Because they're the newest batch of next voters that they were hoping for. The old adage, don't carry all your eggs in one basket. Right, Democrats? Right, Bob in New York? Who you're going to have a red governor. Wait and see. And then where do you run to? Where are you going to run to, Bob? What blue state? Want to move to Philadelphia? Nah. Nah, you don't want to move there, Bob. So, in that, I'm going to be closing this up. I'm going to put this show out probably by 2 p.m. today. I'll have it up there, edited and shoved out the door. I'm going to do it real quick. I'm just going to put some fonts up and that's it. I need people to subscribe. I'm going to keep putting that on my banners. Please subscribe. Please subscribe. I'm doing some shorts, getting better with my shorts on YouTube and pushing them out onto stop doing that. Pushing it out onto Facebook and Rumble. I'm not too impressed with Rumble. And I'm not impressed with X. But I am impressed with YouTube. And Facebook. I am impressed with them. They got it pretty well nailed down and figured out. All right. Give to a charity. Charity does begin at home. But if you can help people, help people. Just make sure you're helping a legitimate charity. Don't become a victim trying to help victims. Give to a local food bank. They need more than just food. Paper goods, feminine products, baby products, diapers, clothing. Bring food and ask them, what else do you need other than food? So you could try to do that for your next trip. But in the meantime, just bring 4 cans. If everyone that watches some of my videos do that, that could be 500 more cans going out that normally would never have gone out. And it could be corn and peas and or corned beef hash or whatever. What we found out is that they really like those little cans of like Vienna wieners and stuff. I guess it's a source of protein and it's meat and you can put that in rice. There's a lot you can do with it. And put it in beans and serve that as a meal. Do that. Say a prayer. Prayer works. It does. And with that, I'm going to say good night. It is 12 noon straight up here, so I'm going to say good night to everyone. And YouTubers, I'll catch you later. You guys have a good one.